Greetings, citizens! My name is FailureToReport, and welcome to the latest episode of Reverse the Verse. On today's episode, we have about 20 minutes of me trying out really terrible dad jokes I learned while I was living as a bridge hobo, and about 10 minutes of interviewing people who took, 8 takes to look excited over the same questions we've had them answer for years now. Okay, not really, citizen. As much as I've flirted with the parody format, we aren't quite there yet. However, I wanted to start today's video out a little lighthearted because things are going to get a little dark with today's review of Star Citizen Milestone Patch 3.7 Live. Over the last few years, I typically do a preview video of a milestone patch while it's on the test universe, and I've slowly been shying away from that to give Cloud Imperium the benefit of the doubt and time to decide just what they want to push to the live servers. You fanboys stalking this channel probably didn't catch that, did you? Nope. All you do is over any criticism I give the project regardless of it being warranted or not. But the fact of the matter is, I give Cloud Imperium a pass on a lot of things. Like, a ton. Because, spoiler alert, I don't hate the project. I just have serious reservations about the progress, the company behind it, and the management. Now, the reason for this disclaimer is that I skipped doing a 3.7 PTU review or preview or whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to be much more critical towards this patch in its live iteration. That doesn't mean it's all bad, but I'm also taking the gloves off when pointing out the bad today. So if you're going to be one of those extra sensitive backers who is already typing into the comments about how no other game has ever had this much explorable content or something else that's factually wrong, go take your Xanax because this one is probably going to test your blood pressure. So, let us begin. Star Citizen 3.7 went live 2 days ago to booming reception, at least for the servers, because they all went boom and didn't work for 7 hours after the build was pushed to the patcher, and more importantly, at least to Cloud Imperium, the storefront got updated. After 7 hours of all RSI services being offline, with not a peep from Cloud Imperium, they eventually tried unplugging it and plugging it back in, and we were off to the Verse 3.7. Let's go over the major features and things of note in 3.7 before I start cutting this build up. Finally arriving in a PU server near you is ship rentals. Now, we've had ship purchasing with in-game credits for about a year now, and it's been met with some mixed reception from backers. The practical, low-level backers who only have a starter tier real money ship have many times voiced criticism over ship purchasing because the prices are fairly high compared to possible income just to get into some of the mid-tier ships like the Cutlass, Freelancer, or Constellation, especially when servers don't have full persistence and they wipe every quarter. It's frankly a very large hill to grind your way up just to have the ground pulled out from under you and told to do it all again next time there's a major patch. Well, with ship rentals, you no longer have to front the entire cost of a ship in order to upgrade. So, peasant backers should be rejoicing with the arrival of 3.7. Right? Well, no. Because in CIG's infinite marketing wisdom, they ensured the pricing was still a pain enough that an entry backer is going to be struggling to make the rent from day-to-day usage. With basic ships like the Freelancer base costing all of $35K a day and bounty missions no longer being the credit fountain that they were in 3.5, you're left to do some actual grinding to keep the rental tags current with the UEE. Still though, I have to give credit to Cloud Imperium for adding the rentals. While they are a little more expensive than I feel is warranted given in the current game's income economy, I was definitely in the camp of backers who thought Cloud Imperium would drag out in-game purchasing and rentals for as many years as they could, and I'm very glad that they proved me wrong, even if the system does need work. The important thing is the foundation is there. Another major feature for patch 3.7 that you've no doubt either heard about, seen, or taken part of is the addition of caves and FPS mining. These features have been kind of a mixed bag in my experience. While there are currently 3 planets with cave systems, they all feel pretty similar in terms of visuals and actual layout. You have your winding entrances, your big open areas, and your little nooks for mineable rocks. And while this is first iteration of caves, it's just a bit depressing that all of the caves essentially look like the same, minus a few of them having random objects scattered inside and others not. This really lends to my opinion that caves were kind of a rushed feature to make up for a year that saw the vast majority of content, especially gameplay loops, pushed to the right into 2020. Many of the caves suffer from random injury glitches, the missions to recover bodies don't update properly when entering the cave, or you spend the time zooming down into the depths of a cave to find a body and it never spawns. However, the real payout for going into caves isn't to grab the bodies of the people who got lost and backspaced out, it's the first person mining. If you've ever spent time in the Prospector mining in Star Citizen, this is going to feel really familiar, because you're going to be doing more of mouse wheel minigame mining. While I've made mention multiple times of just how much I despise Star Citizen's mining mechanics, I do know that there are a lot of crazy sadists out there that think mouse wheel slider mining is the cat's pajamas. So if you're one of those people, rejoice, you're getting more of that. And to make it even more cause for celebration, it seems Prospector space mining has been made rather underwhelming in recent months, but hand mining in caves? The income's not too bad. While cave FPS mining can have some decent payouts when you find the right rocks, the system of sliding is not without its headaches. Unlike mining in the Prospector, the multi-tool is much less refined in its beam adjustment, and to make matters worse, overloading the ore rock in FPS mining is much more punishing than in the Prospector. When you don't ace the laser drill output minigame mouse slider like an Asian kid doing Dance Dance Revolution in the Prospector, your only penalty is needing to back off mining, maybe losing some progress on splitting the ore open, or needing to let the rock cool down before trying again. With FPS mining, if you touch the red at all, they seem to explode when you finally open the rock. Even if you let the progress bar completely reset and let the rock cool off and then crack it, without ever touching the red, it explodes and you take damage. So, pro tip for FPS mining, bring many medipens. But, if you can brave the depths of cave mining and target specific minerals, you do stand to make a pretty penny. Well, provided some mean jerkbutt doesn't blow up your ship while you're down there breaking rocks and then camps the entrance until you come out so he can take your haul. I'm honestly not sure whether to compliment CIG for always making planet-side activities an anxiety trigger, like riding an elevator out of a bunker or having to walk out of a dark, cramped cave into a sunlit funnel, or to criticize them for how easy they make it to grief people doing these activities. Another major change with 3.7 was the removal of the hover mode flight model. I know I talk a lot of crap about the guys who took over the flight model system, and it probably sounds really personal with the insulting that I do, so I just want to take a second to give them a little love. Well done, boys. It was a very smart move to take hover mode back to the drawing board. Now, while hover mode was introduced in patch 3.6 and is removed in patch 3.7, it isn't gone for good. So for those of you who absolutely hated helicopter flight landings, don't break out the banners and party hats just yet, because hover mode is coming back, citizen. It actually kind of took me by surprise how many backers commented when I made the video on hover mode in patch 3.6 PTU, thinking I was against hover mode. Look guys, I'm a veteran of PlanetSide 2, like vanilla launch PlanetSide 2. I still get PTSD flashbacks of trying to run out of a building while being rained upon by high explosive shells from hovering Liberator gunships. I do not, by any means, support ships being able to endlessly hover in atmosphere without serious consequences. So when I say I'm glad Cloud Imperium had the sense to remove hover mode from 3.6, it's because it was a bad system, not because I want hovering ship turrets or I couldn't fly with it. Hover mode was poorly implemented. It took control away from pilots at terrible times, something no pilot ever wants unless they're drunk or incapacitated in some other fashion. The point is that it needed to be improved, and thankfully CIG's flight team realized that and were wise enough to roll the system back until they could tune it better. So, again, good job CIG. This was a good thing to do. Another major change for 3.7, and honestly one of the most notable ones, is that enemy AI has finally been given about half of their brains back. After patch 3.5, Star Citizen's AI has been, well, special. Like the weird kid who sits in the corner and licks the wall special. While CIG had multiple patch notes dedicated to fixing the AI in 3.6, they were never really the same as 3.4 and earlier builds. Rejoice gamers, as of 3.7, Star Citizen's NPCs are finally mostly functioning. But most importantly, not teleporting and twitching everywhere like they're having a stroke. While this is obviously a major quality of life change for the spaceship game, where you fly spaceships, It sadly comes during the patch where bounty missions seem to have become all but extinct and the credit fountain has pretty much dried up. Segment warning. This is the part of the video where Cloud Imperium applauding is going to start turning the opposite direction. If you are allergic to hearing mean things about CIG or Star Citizen, this is the part of the video where you stop watching, or alternatively, you start flapping your meaty sausage fingers furiously at your keyboard to tell me how wrong I am. You've been warned, don't cry about it in the comments. First and foremost, I want to complain about the game's pretend economy. To be very kindergarten clear, there is no real economy in Star Citizen still. It's a bunch of smoke and mirrors to simulate a real economy, but the back end is essentially CIG setting each kiosk with a product, an amount of stock, and a timer for when that stock is replenished. While this system affects many different aspects of Star Citizen, you might be asking why FTR is complaining about the economy in 3.7 specifically. Well, because FPS mining. With the introduction of handheld mining, CIG's pretend economy starts to have some really annoying side effects outside of the usual pain in the ass of trying to sell off large quantities of trade goods. Because now people are buying up all of the medipens, flares, and multi-tools, which leaves you sitting there staring at the kiosk, wasting more of your time waiting for a stock refresh instead of being out in the verse enjoying the verse. While the smoke and mirrors economy isn't by itself terrible, I mean, if you don't have a real economy, having a pretend one is better than nothing. The problem is, for whatever stupid reason, CIG set the stock quantities on these items pathetically low. Need to grab a handful of medipens for your cave spelunking? Sorry, you can buy 2. That's all we have available. You know, like when you want to buy a pack of pens from Walmart, but oh sorry, they only stock 10 at a time. And it's back to school rush, so everybody is buying them. That's basically what outfitting for caves is like in 3.7. The stocks for these items are embarrassingly small, and they sell out way too fast, leaving you sitting at the kiosk waiting on an artificial timer to pass so the store inventory will suddenly magically refresh. CIG, this is a really stupid thing. I'm not criticizing you for your pretend economy, but your values that the team has been using on the pretend economy since you introduced it are stupid. From outfitting for cave diving to large quantity commodity trading. These starports should not be running out of stock from one person. A huge portion of your community are space trucker enthusiasts. We have the Caterpillar right now, and soon we'll be getting the C2 Hercules, which puts the Cat's cargo hold to shame. This isn't even talking about the Hull C we were supposed to have a year ago. One person should not be dumpstering any location's economy and availability. Now, despite 3.7 having some major quality of life improvements, tuning of mechanics, and additional gameplay in the form of getting stranded in caves and breaking little rocks into littler rocks, they also added 4 new ships. And this is a spaceship game, so we should probably talk about those ships. Let's start things off with the Vanguard variants. Sold as concepts in 2015, these babies have been a long-awaited set of JPEGs for Vanguard jockeys. Even after the original Vanguard turned into a Frankenstein of copy-pasting Saber assets and under-delivering on what the concept was sold as, a lot of us Vanguard fanboys were hoping CIG would finally do right by what they promised with the Vanguard Sentinel and Harbinger. It's kind of like hearing about Bernie Madoff taking other people's money and screwing them over, but you're like, well, maybe he won't do that to me, because I'm special. Because that's the mentality you needed to think CIG wasn't going to disappoint you with the new Vanguard variants. In the case of the Sentinel, it's mostly an issue of overall gameplay in Star Citizen still being in its infantile stages, where the Sentinel just doesn't fit because there is no electronic warfare in Star Citizen. Radar spoofing with decoys doesn't exist, Battlefield CNC isn't a thing, and EMPs are in a hellishly broken place. So, while I'm personally very annoyed with how few overall gameplay loops exist in Star Citizen, one could be forgiving if this ship's gameplay loop just wasn't there yet, and it was simply waiting for that to be added. After all, the majority of Star Citizen's ship roster consists of ships that don't have their gameplay loops yet. Unfortunately, however, that isn't the Sentinel's only problem. A key theme with the Vanguard variant seems to be, we're reworking the Vanguard Warden's interior, so now's the time to do variants. Let's just do more lazy copy-pasting. After all, that's the hallmark of the Vanguard in this game. And so, in a sad twist of irony, the Harbinger and Sentinel suffered the same fate of the Warden. It's just copy-pasted. They changed the color scheme and put some different weapons in it and edited the Warden stats and saved the file as Sentinel instead of Warden. None of the defining features of the Sentinel exist. Not only its gameplay related ones like E-War, decoys, advanced sensors, and so forth, but at this ship's core, CIG did not change anything from the Vanguard Warden besides the rear interior. There's no nose array, the Sentinel lost its unique plasma gun that was supposed to be on the size 5 chin mount, and instead CIG was like, well, let's make it a distortion Vanguard. And they just slapped in some copy-paste. The Sentinel also does not have its unique AR cockpit, because that would have meant doing some more modeling, and over yonder at them there Cloud Imperium Studios, they's more about minimum effort and maximum sales. Who cares if they underdeliver what they sold you on something? I suspect this is the same fate the Chin gun suffered for the variants and why the Sentinel ended up with more of the same. Did you catch where I said, is the fate of the Chin guns suffered for the variants, plural? Yeah, let's talk about the Harbinger variant. I'm going to be a bigger dude and give this a disclaimer. I'm very biased on this particular ship, so get ready for some extra salty tone on this one. The Vanguard Harbinger, in theory, shouldn't suffer from the same problems that the Sentinel does, as its core gameplay is heavy attacker. And if there's one gameplay loop that Star Citizen has had the longest, it's combat. Where the Sentinel's gimmick is E-War, the Harbinger's is heavy guns, heavy armor, and torpedoes. It was a ship made for killing the mid-range whale ships. Armed with size 6 torpedoes, a chin-mounted mass driver railgun, and a belt-fed rocket turret, this ship was designed to kill things. What did we get? A Vanguard Warden with a different fucking loadout. Not only did CIG say, hey, we can't figure out how to make a belt-fed rocket system. Let's just put the rocket pods we already have from the Mustang Delta on the turret and call it good. What the fuck are the backers gonna do? But they also said, making a new railgun for the Harbinger seems like work. Let's just use some crap we already have. And so not only did they not give this ship its specialty chin weapon, they chose the worst gun in the fucking game, the Combine Ballistic Cannon, as the replacement for this ship. Solid. The biggest weapon on the ship, and not only did you just dump an old asset on it, you picked one that has been broken in the PU for over 2 fucking years. Did CIG go, man, we're really screwing these Harbinger guys over, we should probably fix this Combine cannon real quick at least? Hell no! Welcome to Star Citizen, you cucks. You get the shit we put out, peasants. Who cares if the ship costs just shy of $300? This is a Vanguard. This ship's motto is copy-paste, fuckboy. The absolute butchering that CIG did on this ship's weapons is obvious and appalling. But wait, there's more! They also decided, well, if we aren't going to bother doing any modeling work on the Sentinel, why stop there? And so none of the cosmetic differences in the Harbinger made it in either. You know, things that they specifically promoted during the concept sale, like an up-armored cockpit. Zero cosmetic differences to show that the Harbinger is overall an up-armored variant of the Warden and Sentinel. Nah, that's work. We don't do that here at Cloud Imperium. My disappointment with the effort CIG put into the Vanguard this year is pretty immeasurable. While I'm glad the Warden got an interior rework and had some touch-ups done on the outside, that was literally the time to put in the effort to make the variants unique and to show that you at least tried to have these ships live up to their original concept. Instead, it's just more blatantly obvious copying of one ship to the next to the next. It's basically the hot plate all over again, and don't even get me started on that fucking ship. You think the Valkyrie and Cargo triggered me? The Vanguards are way more personal to me, and I'll go full fucking remote if I have to spend enough time on these ships. But before we do go, I want to take a quick second to address the guy who was responsible for the Vanguard rework. My dude, thank you for the work you did on the Warden's exterior. While it might not be as slimmed down as the concept Vanguard we were sold, you did do a great job on making the beluga whale look at least a little bit more like a mean heavy fighter. Yeah, I'm a little bit salty about just how much unused space there is on the interior of these ships, but since that's a chronic issue in pretty much every ship in Star Citizen, I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up as a Chris Roberts thing. My biggest complaint about the work you did, the tank treads. Now, I'm team tank treads, and I know some people hate them. They're wrong, but they're entitled to their misguided opinions. However, these things are way too small. I know this is a nitpick on your work, but if you ever get a chance to do another pass on the Vanguard's exteriors, like, I don't know, maybe when they actually implement some kind of cosmetic difference between the variants, please beef these up just a bit. Oh, Jesus. And that just covers only one of the 3 new ship airframes. This is starting to feel like a job. Christ. Okay. The Banu Defender. It's a crab. The next, Mantis. It's useless, but it looks cool. All right. What else do we have in this outline? Just kidding. Don't worry, I'm not going to cheat you guys. This isn't Cloud Imperium Video Productions. Let's talk about the official long-range escort fighter of the crab people, the Banu Defender. This ship is one that started in a bit of controversy the week the concept was sold back in 2017. The center of this controversy being the cockpit. At first, backers were losing their nuts over the Defender's cool little gimmick of the arms cocking back during landing format and then rotating and extending out in flight mode. That is, until somebody pulled up the 3D model HoloViewer and went inside of the cockpit and looked out of the window. It's obviously a bit of an adjustment to fly any ship with an off-center cockpit. Looking at you, Caterpillar. But what makes it worse is when you also lose visibility to your sides, and suddenly the community realized those cool extendy arms were going to also be obstructing the pilot's view to the sides. While being off-center and having the body of a ship obscuring your view is a bit of an adjustment in the Caterpillar, it's kind of acceptable because the Caterpillar is a giant space barge. It isn't going to be dogfighting anything, where the Banu Defender is first and foremost a long-range escort craft of the Banu meant to keep their precious merchantmen safe from attackers. Being able to see what your target is doing is fairly important in a dogfight. It allows you to read how they're moving and rotating, and thus gives you the ability to countermaneuver or adjust to keep your shops landing where you want them. After the community pointed out the issue with the Defender, CIG assured backers who had spilled their wallets for this new crab critter that they were going to address the issue. So, as you can imagine, it was quite worrisome over the years since the concept sale when CIG would show off teasers of the Defender, and there was one area that they always neglected to show: the cockpit. Here's the crab's crabby arms. Here's the crab's beds. Have you seen the cool new alien material the crab is made of? Look, here's the crab critter's laser guns. What? The cockpit? Oh yeah, it's being addressed. In the end, kind of unsurprisingly, the cockpit wasn't really changed. So, does that make the Defender bad? Despite having an obstructed cockpit view in this fighter, it's not the end of the world, and we've definitely had worse. Thoughts and prayers to all of you Car2Al backers. Much love. And the Defender kind of makes up for the bad view with how agile this ship feels, which is both good and bad. While the Defender has the ability to turn and burn to keep a target in the field of view you want it, CIG is notorious for flubbing around with ship characteristics and stats, and that leaves what is currently a competent ship vulnerable to getting a handling change that will make the cockpit issue much more glaring than it is currently. And hey, it isn't like CIG has ever sold a concept ship that was overpowered and then nerfed it once sales are tapped, right, Anvil Arrow? Now, despite the cockpit being one of the glaring issues with the concept design, the Defender's biggest problem right now is how quickly it can be made helpless by blowing off one of those big arms. Once you lose one of those, the ship pulls almost uncontrollably in that direction, to the point that it's hard to even align a quantum beacon, much less in combat where you're a free kill. Now, CIG never likes to answer any of the questions I have for them, so I have no idea if this is an intended vulnerability or a bug that will be fixed. But it's definitely the biggest issue with the Defender currently in 3.7. One of the other frustrating issues with the Defender are its signature weapons, the Singes. These lasers pew-pew are hit-scan, alien cannon, beam sniper rifles. Their range is incredibly good to match their damage, but the problem currently is that they don't get lead pips, and after CIG introduced weapon conversion, they seem to be crisscrossing at almost random points when aiming at a target, which makes using these things incredibly frustrating, and to make matters worse, they feel like the visual effect of the shot isn't actually lined up with where they're hitting, which means getting lead and lag feedback on where you need to be shooting can be very frustrating. But with that said, God save any poor idiot stupid enough to fly straight at you, because even with the stock quad-size 2 Singes, they do savage damage when they connect. Now, would I advocate somebody buying a Defender though? I would ask you how you feel about paying alien tax first and foremost, because with the price bump up to $220 USD, it's there. However, the Defender offers very good quantum travel range, strong slapping guns when they hit, and good maneuverability. Just don't get hit back, because the second you lose one of those large obtruding arms, it's pretty much game over. Once again, before we move on to the Mantis, I want to give credit to the artist or artists who worked on the Defender. This ship looks beautiful. The material textures are amazing, and the quantum travel effect that they made for this ship makes jumping in a human ship feel incredibly disappointing after seeing the hypnotizing Banu quantum effect. I'm a little bit bitter that swapping the Defender's quantum drive into a human ship doesn't carry over this effect, but at any rate, this ship visually is on a whole new level than any other work CIG has made so far. I mean, this ship actually bleeds when it starts taking damage. This was quality work, and whoever was responsible for the Defender should take pride in that work. Unlike the Mantis. Alright, the new straight-to-flight-ready concept ship. Have we realized these are a bad idea yet? CIG touts their funding gimmick that you're involved in the development, and how much they value your feedback. Then they keep pushing these straight-to-flight ready ships that have so many issues that would have been caught and given feedback during the concept and design phase. But instead, the ship goes straight to flight ready, and when people offer feedback on it, you get the Chris Roberts Defense Force screaming and telling everyone to stop complaining. CIG is all like, "We love your feedback," and its fanatical backers are like,
"Stop giving feedback, you're complaining, it's all amazing, pre-alpha, you don't get it!"
Anyways, the Mantis is a single-seater from RSI, and is meant to be the first true interdiction ship, one that is purpose-built to disrupt quantum travel. Let's talk about that first and foremost. So, despite CIG promising since the first iteration of interdiction devices in the PU that they would be sold as devices that could be equipped by many ships, the Mantis is a purpose-built ship whose entire rear is dedicated to quantum enforcement device, which really leaves a lot to be contemplated about what ships are going to be able to just slap on an interdiction device if it takes the entire ass end of the Mantis to have one. But the issue I want to start with on the Mantis segment is whether or not it can do its job. Can it interdict enemy ships? The short answer is no. Channel regulars should remember when I was memeing on morons who bought the Nautilus, the $725 mine laying capital ship, and how stupid it was for CIG to come up with that ship in a space game where, well, space is big, right? The Mantis falls victim to the same principle. Space is huge, especially when you start talking about covering millions and millions of kilometers of distance from different points and times. You see, when planets rotate, it changes your point of origin. You aren't jumping from the exact same spot as somebody who took off from the exact same spot 10 minutes earlier, which means your path of travel is different than that person. Yet, the whole concept of the Mantis and its primary function depends on being able to predictably set this ship in a lane where other ships are going to pass. And that's just statistically, mathematically, nearly impossible to do because the interdiction bubble on this ship is only 20 kilometers. Now, when you hear someone say 20 kilometers, that sounds big to you, right? But in space, that's nothing. It's not even a millimeter to our normal perception of scale. To illustrate this, we had somebody take a Mantis out of Port Olisar, set destination to ArcCorp, jump out a few 100,000 kilometers, and then drop out of quantum travel. Another person sets the same destination from Port Olisar, and while in a party to verify that their course appears to cross over the Mantis driver, the Mantis engages its quantum travel interdiction and has its field active. The second person, who is intended to be our victim, then rolls down their window and waves to the Mantis pilot's marker as they blow past it because 20 kilometers of an interdiction bubble is so small in relation to the vastness of space. So, aside from this little RSI ship not being able to actually perform its purpose-built function, how's the rest of the ship? Well, the Mantis feels like it was rushed out for content similar to the way caves feel unfinished and hurried alive. I would not be one bit surprised if the most development time on this ship was spent making its quantum enforcement devices visual and sound effects, because the ship's design is woefully plain and empty and basic. There are multiple design choices in this ship which make me shake my head in disappointment, from the engines being on the nacelles that break off with literally the slightest bump or damage, to the belly-loaded elevator, which has been a constant annoyance in Star Citizen for making people clip off of them or ragdoll when using an EVA. Now, in terms of performance, the Mantis has insanely good roll and decent pitch. It handles well, especially with accelerating and decelerating, but the sad fact is you aren't really going to get much out of this ship with those attributes because its stock armament is 2 size 3 cannons and it can't take a punch. This ship really isn't meant to be fighting anything, much less operating alone where you would be attacking anyone. And as I said before, its engine placement makes it incredibly vulnerable from fire or collision. Now, I recently read a review about the Mantis on Spectrum posted by somebody where they said the absolutely stupidest thing I've ever seen on Spectrum, and I've seen some real dumb shit, where they complained about the one feature in this ship which is S tier, the cockpit view. Anyone who is complaining about the view of the Mantis is an absolute lemming, and I'd be really curious to know if the only ship they've ever stood in prior to the Mantis was the Prospector, because the Mantis is easily one of the best cockpits CIG has ever made in terms of visibility. So much so that I would offer CIG certain unmentionable favors to get the Mantis cockpit copy-pasted into the Connie variants. Like, if you're sitting there telling me you think this is bad, when their cockpits for RSI usually consist of this, or this, and you think this is a bad cockpit, I'm instantly going to disregard your opinion on anything else because you clearly sit around in your mom's basement eating lead paint chips as an afternoon snack. Like, you have to be a real special dunce hat wearing moron to complain about the Mantis cockpit, especially when it's easily the Mantis's best standout feature. At the end of the day though, that's really all the Mantis has going for it. You have a nice view to take in the vastness of space as you sit there in the dark for hours hoping your interdiction device pulls something out. Like, anything. After a long enough time committing to a snare, you'll be happy to have a UEE hammerhead drop out on top of you. Like, something. Please. Am I alone out here? It's a bad ship concept, at least as implemented. And buying this ship is a terrible waste of money unless CIG is willing to vastly increase its interdiction bubble. But then the problem turns into, how do you even capitalize on interdicting somebody when they might drop out, say, 100 kilometers away from you? Even with a supporting group of killers to help the Mantis, that's a massive distance to cover and control. But outside of parking the Mantis right on top of a destination funnel, like Olisar, a rest stop, or some other point of interest, this ship is a $150 virtual paperweight. Avoid this ship like the plague. Did somebody say plague? It's been a while since I've ragged on the sales team over there with any kind of dedicated segment in my videos, and I feel bad for not giving my favorite snake oil team any love. So let's talk about the newest slimy crap the CIG marketing team came up with for 3.7, the Warbond CCU upgrade. With the introduction of the Mantis concept sale, CIG also put out a new Warbond CCU, whereby paying with fresh cash to CCU from an Aurora to a Mantis, it will upgrade your Aurora Game Pack's insurance from whatever it was to lifetime insurance. Thanks to some backer posting to Reddit that this was a great new way to get pack LTI by demonstrating that you could buy a pack like the Drake Loot and Scoot and then CCU the Dragonfly and that pack to an Aurora and then buy a Warbond Mantis CCU, you would get lifetime insurance on the Loot and Scoot pack, which normally only has 6 months. Except, it doesn't seem to work like that, and this guy single-handedly probably screwed countless backers out of money and helped CIG make 90 a pop in the process. This new CCU insurance looks to only apply to the Mantis, which means if you followed this backer's advice and bought like a Drake Loot and Scoot pack and upgraded to a Mantis, you now have an LTI Mantis and 6 months on your Cutlass. And even if you use store credit to buy the Drake pack and CCU for the Dragonfly to Aurora, you just blew $90 for an LTI token Mantis, which is absolutely terrible. Not only is there many options out there for LTI tokens costing as little as $45, but the Mantis is a $150 melt value ship, which means you needlessly paid $50 more to have less options for cross-chassis upgrading. Good job, Reddit, we did it again! So, while I like the idea of being able to upgrade a ship to LTI, even if it does mean Warbond fresh cash, I have serious concern with this new system because, as we have seen year after year, Cloud Imperium are masters of slowly dipping their backers into the boiling water so that they don't squirm and make a fuss as CIG implements more and new ways to screw them out of their money. Warbond sales started as just a concept to incentivize spending new cash instead of using store credit by offering forum flair and a slight price discount, even though that discount was probably artificial. Then, when even that didn't stop people from melting their old ships, which were less appealing than the new concept, CIG started putting in-game goodies into the Warbond packs, from serialized hull numbers, skins, or extra in-game items, but even that didn't stop people from realizing that the new shiny was almost always punching above its weight class, compared to the old JPEG the backer had. CIG finally said, screw it. Let's take away lifetime insurance from these backers. We don't care that they gave us money in the past, that they're melting an old concept we might have totally ruined, or they just don't find appealing once we finally get it in-game, or that by using store credit to buy the new concept, they're still buying a concept that may drastically change and thus falls under our excuse of offering lifetime insurance when concepts first go on sale. Nah, we only want new money, or we're screwed. So, with a slow escalation of war bonds, backers lost more and more value on their store credit until we finally landed where only war bond purchases get lifetime insurance, and anyone using store credit can go suck it. Having seen the multitude of terrible marketing practices CIG has used over the last 9 years, this new Warbond CCU option has me very concerned that we will eventually see CCUing change over to some variation where Cloud Imperium can force people to CCU with fresh cash only if they want to get LTI on new concept ships. Where currently, if you have a ship with LTI that is of lower value, you can pay the difference with store credit to CCU up to a new concept ship to get that shiny new LTI, since you can't outright buy a concept package or ship with store credit and get lifetime insurance. Alright. It's now time to touch on probably the most cancerous part of this entire milestone patch. Something that has been such an ugly presence in this patch that it basically takes all the spotlight away from any good things CIG implemented with 3.7. Interdiction. No, not player-driven new shiny concept ship interdiction. Oh no. At this point when I'm pulled out of quantum travel, I beg the gods that I see a player in his little Mantis going, haha, I got ya. No. This new plague of Star Citizen is the insane occurrence of AI interdictions. As of patch 3.7, interdictions have gone from a tedious annoyance to absolute cancer. I'm not talking about normal, everyday Star Citizen poor design cancer. No, I'm talking about like going to Chernobyl and rolling around in a pile of graphite debris cancer. Interdictions are so out of control that only the most steadfast of Chris Roberts' knob polishers are left defending the state of 3.7, while interdictions are openly moaned about on Spectrum. Now, this is Star Citizen, and the game prioritizing tedium over enjoyable gameplay is nothing new out of the messiah of gaming running this project. But the really frustrating thing about this terrible state of quantum travel is that when CIG introduced this build to the test servers the day before it went live, testers were giving constant feedback that this build broke something with interdictions and that they were way off of the charts. But Cloud Imperium is not the kind of company to be bothered by breaking their game state in order to get a new quarter patch out in time for that fresh new sale. So that's exactly what we were left with. The marketing arm of CIG said,
"But it's our anniversary mini sale. We can't delay the release of Live just because the game is in a terrible state with this build."
And so fates were sealed and CIG squeezed this turd out to backers everywhere. Now, the reason I highlight this, since it's basically a bug and I normally don't focus on bugs in these reviews, is that this isn't the first nor likely the last time CIG has ignored a major gameplay hindering or breaking issue that is pointed out by community testers on the test server, only for CIG to ignore them and push a bad build to live in order to capitalize on a sale or some other event. This kind of stuff is really disheartening when CIG has some of the most supportive, apologetic, and loyal fanbase of anything, not just in gaming, like period. Their community literally pays to bug test and file reports. That's literally a job anywhere else, and here in Star Citizen land, people are paying the company to do it. So it's pretty frustrating when things like the interdiction issue are ignored, or issue council reports where dozens of testers take their time to document and confirm issue reports are left unresolved for weeks, months, or even years. So this segment isn't really just about the shitty quantum travel gameplay and how horribly a rework is needed. It's about CIG's constant tendency to chase the quick buck over actually delivering that constantly touted Chris Roberts quality product. Time and time again, we hear CIG employees and the fanatical fans excuse away delays and other issues with the development with, "Well, CIG doesn't put something out unless it's up to Chris's standards." Well, Chris, you must have some pretty low standards, bud. The real kicker is that the quantum travel issue is just one of many major gameplay issues that made it through PTO to live. I'm not even going to get into the many issues that are happening in caves, like many of them having gaps in the floor where you'll fall through to the center of the planet. Switching weapons while in a cave can make your weapon just straight disappear from your inventory, poof, gone. It never existed. Or that while mining you can break a rock and then suddenly lose all interaction. You can't grab the rocks, you can't put away your tool, you can't open your mobi-glass, nothing. Your only option is to suicide. Or the insane amount of ships that once again don't have an atmosphere inside of their cabins. The amount of rest stops that are still failing to offer refueling and repair services, or how the majority of ships are regenerating next to zero hydrogen fuel even when they have fuel scoops, turn off couple mode, and drift through space with zero thruster use. Star Citizen 3.7 is riddled with things like that, and it really makes a mockery of the whole principle that, oh, everything's only delayed because Chris wants it up to his standards. Now, to the game's credit, 3.7 does seem to be a fairly stable client though. Actual crashes are fairly rare. However, CIG's server infrastructure is utterly falling apart. So instead of crashing to desktop, you're much more likely to see 30K errors or the server just outright no longer responding, even if they don't error you out to the main menu. Despite the many issues of patch 3.7 though, I am generally happy it's here. There are many quality of life improvements to the game, especially over 3.6. However, there are also many issues that need to be ironed out, and I have my doubts on them getting addressed before CIG already needs to be pushing patch 3.8 out the door. Mission sharing, for instance, is an amazing new feature in patch 3.7, which means you can accept any mission off of the mobi-glass and give it to everybody in your party. But that also means the payout is split with however many people you're playing with. Now, this wouldn't be that big of a deal if there were actually missions that had payouts and difficulty scaled to group play, but the vast majority of mission rewards are barely enough to cover the time and effort one person spends on them, much less two or more. I think the mission sharing mechanic is a great representation of Star Citizen overall. There's lots of good ideas and concepts scattered around the room, but none of them show any level of being thought out or implemented well. And that's been Star Citizen's struggle ever since it moved out of the just hangar module and arena commander phase. It's clear the leadership in the project either doesn't play the game at all, or they're trying to play 17-dimension chess, and they're hoping that it all just kind of falls together at some point without ever really reflecting on whether the different moves they're making on those different dimensions are fun, enjoyable, or going to add to the overall game. In the end though, the quality of life changes are obviously welcome. But as of Star Citizen patch 3.7, the core issues with Star Citizen remain. There are very few gameplay loops, and the whole let's just use our imaginations to create content in the sandbox is still the biggest thing propping up Star Citizen. The lack of persistence in the PU is critically hindering. If you're trucking cargo or out delivering boxes or doing anything and a server dies, which they're very often known to do, you lose everything. This isn't Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, or any other MMO where you reconnect and you're back where you were when you got disconnected. Your ship is gone and you're respawning. While Star Citizen has a crash recovery feature, it doesn't work for servers dying, and even when you do crash to desktop, it doesn't always reliably reconnect you back to your last session, often reconnecting to the server, only to be waking up in the respawn and anything you were doing previously is lost. While long-term persistence is something that's sorely needed in this game, I'd rather see a wipe every 3 months but having an in-game universe that supports things like logging out at rest stops, planet outposts, inside of your ship, or out in space, and being able to reliably know that the next time you have a few hours to blow on Star Citizen, you aren't starting over at your respawn hab and potentially wasting half an hour just getting out to your ship and out of the planet atmosphere to actually start playing the game. So, is Star Citizen 3.7 worth playing? Yes and no. Performance when the servers can support it is fairly good. Frame rate stutters here and there, but it isn't anywhere near as bad as some older patches. Gameplay wise, FPS mining can be fun, and it's a bit of a rush when considering possible PvP encounters on the way to your payout. But in the grand scheme of things, patch 3.7 is basically just patch 3.6 with some extra stuff. If you haven't played Star Citizen for several patches now, it might be worth your time to jump on and see the sights. If you stop playing during 3.6 because of hover mode, things are right back the way you like them. But if you tried 3.6 and you just hated all of the things, you're not likely going to enjoy anything new about 3.7 either. If you're somehow watching this video and you've never played Star Citizen at all, Hang around because November is CitizenCon, which will almost certainly mean a new Free Fly event, in which you can try Star Citizen for free and form your own opinion on the game based on your own play experience. Now then, as always citizens, I am FailureToReport. I hope you enjoyed this video and it helped bring you up to speed on things or made you reflect on issues currently going on with Star Citizen. Stay safe out there, and I will see all of you guys in the verse.